Hi, welcome back to Flash Recap. Today I'm gonna show you a 2016 drama romance movie called The Late Bloomer. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins and we see a boy named Peter. Peter is 27 years old. Peter is a sex therapist, and it treats those people who want to have obsessive sex. Peter was about to start therapy for a very hot girl today, but this girl is unable to control herself here, and she starts attracting Peter towards her. This girl tells Peter, "Would you like to be physical with me?" After listening to the girl, Peter gives her one of his books to read. It was written in this book, how we can control our inner feelings, and move forward in our life. Peter was completely against sex here, and it claims that he has never had sex till date, because Peter believed that sex separates all of us from the goal of our life, and even without sex, we can live our life very well. After this, Peter comes to his house. Here we see two of his friends, in which the name of one is Rich and the name of the other is Luke. These two friends of Peter were not like Peter at all, because they were always ready to have sex. Peter tells them that he is going out of the house, because today a friend of its, Michelle, has called it for dinner at his house. Michelle was going to feed Peter a variety of dishes today. Here we get to know from Peter's words that Peter likes Michelle inside. Next, Peter arrives at Michelle's house. Peter meets Charlie here as soon as Michelle comes home. Charlie is Michelle's boyfriend, who always cares about his work. Peter meets Mitchell. Michelle made many types of dishes here. Peter checks all the dishes a little bit. Peter likes all the dishes, because of which Peter asks Michelle to open a restaurant. Michelle likes this idea of Peter very much. After party is over, Peter comes to his house. Here we find out that Peter's father is very upset because of Peter's non-sexuality. He tells Peter's mom, even if Peter was gay it was fine, but what kind of boy is he? I did not know this till today, because he doesn't want to have sex at all. Next, Peter comes to his office, where Peter's boss tells Peter that the book he had written against sex, that book is becoming very popular, because of which Peter has been called for an interview in a very big show. When Peter comes home, so he sees Charlie outside Michelle's house. Peter finds out here that Charlie and Michelle have breakup, because Charlie was always busy with his work, and he could not give time to Michelle. After leaving Charlie, Peter meets Michelle. Michelle is very sad, and she hugs Peter and starts crying. Michelle tells Peter that now I will struggle to become a chef, because you always told me to do so. Peter says here that yes, you should do this. Michelle is very happy with Peter's words, and she starts kissing Peter. Peter was against sex, so even after all this, nothing happens to Peter and he finds all this strange. Peter leaves here saying sorry to Mitchell. Here we find out that sometimes Peter's head hurts. Why does this happen now? You will know this later in the movie. The next morning Rich and Luke visit Peter, and they bring Peter with them to play basketball. While playing basketball, a player hits Peter's testicles with a football, because of which Peter unconscious here. Rich and Luke quickly bring Peter to the hospital, where Peter gets a headache again. At the hospital, doctors do a CT scan and MRI of Peter's head. When the doctor checks Peter's testicles here, so they find out that Peter does not have eggs but two small marbles. That is, its testicles were much smaller than the normal size, and that's why Peter was non-sexual. The next morning when the report arrives, the doctor tells Peter that you have a tumor in your brain for many years, which has suppressed your pituitary gland, because of which your testicles did not grow, and they remained small. Due to the small size of the testicles, testosterone hormones were not being produced in your body, because your body was making prolactin hormones. It meant this, that Peter was 27 years old today. Even after this his nunu could not stand, and for this reason, Peter has never had the desire to have sex till date, and he went on to write different books about sex. Doctor says to Peter that by operating Peter, his brain tumor will come out, after which Peter will be able to enjoy his life well. On hearing the doctor, Peter is overjoyed, because so far Peter thought that he is changing people by not having sex. The doctor operation on Peter, and Peter's operation becomes successful. Everyone welcomes Peter to his new life. After the hospital, Peter stays at his parents' house, so that it can be fixed quickly. Peter tries to wake up his sleeping dreams by looking at the adult magazine, but it doesn't have any effect on it. The next day both of his friends come to meet him, and he also brings a stripper with him, so that this girl can solve Peter's problem. This girl seduces Peter a lot, and she tells Peter to have fun. Peter's weapon does not stand here, but his friend Luke's weapon stands outside. Inside the girl tries hard to pick up Peter's weapon, but Peter's weapon does not rise. The next morning, when Peter wakes up from sleep, then it comes down. Seeing Peter, his family becomes happy, because now Peter Nunu stand up. This means that Peter is no longer a small child. Peter quickly gets ready and goes out of the house to start living his life. Peter comes to his house. Then he sees it, that its friend Luke was getting physical with a girl. Peter asks them to leave. Peter sees here that its Nunu is still standing, so Peter quickly masturbates in the toilet to bend her. Peter starts masturbating several times in his new life to satisfy his lust. One day Michelle meets Peter, and says that she is going to take part in a cooking challenge, and if it wins that challenge, then it will get a chance to work in a big restaurant in Los Angeles, and she can start becoming her chef from there, so it will stay outside for a few days now. Hearing this, Peter feels very sad from inside, but he becomes overjoyed to show it to Michelle. When Peter is in his office, he meets one of his patients. Peter gets excited about sex after listening to his patient, but it is also irritating. Peter comes to the doctor, and asks, why is this happening with this? And why is it getting so excited about sex? The doctor tells it on this, that the testosterone hormones have started forming inside you after 15 years, that's why all this is happening fast in your body, meaning that your cannon is now ready to fire anywhere. Doctor says, that the production of testosterone hormones in your body has started late, therefore, you will also have some side effects like heavy voice, irritability, problems like sexual arousal, but don't panic, because slowly everything will be fine. In the evening, Peter talks to Michelle. Peter asks Michelle about her competition, then Michelle talks about another man here, because of which Peter feels a little jealous. The next day, Peter goes to give his interview on the radio, but Peter's voice changes during the interview, and he could not complete his interview. At night, Peter comes to his parents' house, and tells them about their problems. Peter's father understands Peter very well about puberty, and says, it is normal to have all this at this age, but Peter starts quarreling with his parents here, and here he goes with anger. We see after Peter leaves, that Peter's father is not at all sad about this quarrel, rather, he is very happy, and says, that we have waited for this time for 15 years. In the evening, Peter talks to Michelle again, but Michelle again talks about another man. Peter gets quite angry here at Michelle, and disconnects the call. The next morning Peter meets his friends. Rich tells Peter, that my friend on the coming 22nd date, can you babysitting my baby at my house? Peter says, where are you going? Then Rich tells, that is his anniversary on 22nd date, and on that day he and his wife will have dinner in the restaurant, after that they will go to a hotel and have sex indiscriminately, because children live in the house, that's why we can't do all this at home. Peter agrees to babysitting Rich's child. As the day was passing, Peter starts having a lot of attraction towards sex. Peter's neighbor Josh tells Peter to meet the girls through a Tinder, because on Tinder Peter can meet many girls and have sex with them. Peter ready to it. Peter does all this for this reason, because after proposing to Michelle, he would not want to be physical with any other girl. That's why Peter gets physical with a lot of girls, even before proposing to Michelle. One day when Peter comes to his house, then he sees Charlie outside Michelle's house. Charlie came here to say sorry to Michelle. Peter tells Charlie, that Michelle is not at home, so don't worry too much, and you keep these flowers with me because when Michelle come here, I will tell him that you have given this flower to him. Charlie believed in Peter, that's why Charlie leaves from here by giving these flowers to Peter. When Michelle comes back from her competition, then she even says thanks to Peter for these flowers, but Peter does not tell Michelle, that this flower was brought by Charlie for it. Here Peter asks Michelle for dinner, on which Michelle also agrees. Now this was the first date of both of them, so Peter is well prepared. Peter is getting ready when his friend Rich calls him, and he invites Peter to babysitting his child. But Peter had forgotten, that today is the 22nd date. Peter apologizes to Luke, and says sorry I can't come today, because I am taking Michelle on a date today. Rich gets very angry with Peter. Peter also starts quarreling with Rich like a child. After this, Peter brings Michelle over for dinner at a famous restaurant. Michelle is quite impressed on this, because getting a table in this restaurant is very difficult. Peter behaves like a spoiled boy from here, because he wanted to show Michelle, that this is not the Peter of the past, rather it has changed now. Michelle finds Peter's behavior quite strange. Both of them were about to start dinner. That's when Rich and his wife come here, and here we find out, the table on which these two are sitting, that table was booked by Rich for himself and his wife, but Peter stole that reserve raison. And here it came, because Peter thought, that Rich will not come here leaving his children, but Rich says, that last minute Luke came over to babysitting my baby, because he's not a cheater like Peter. Hearing all these things, Michelle gets up and starts leaving from here. Peter stops Michelle, but Michelle says so, not long ago, I got a message from Charlie, in which he had told, that day that flower was not brought by you, rather Charlie had brought that flower. Michelle gets angry with Peter and leaves from here. The next day, we see Peter with a patient of it, who tells Peter about her fantasy, and she says she likes to have sex. Now Peter's nunu was beginning to stand up, so Peter gets ready for sex after listening to his patient. Peter leaves therapy and gets ready to physical with his patient. Peter was about to take out his paint. That's when Peter's boss comes here, and she sees Peter doing this, so Peter's boss kicks Peter out of his job. Peter could not control the change inside him. That's why he meets his father after a long time, and asks him for some advice. Peter says that it is not getting control over itself. On this his father tells it that this kind of change inside men happens during puberty, because all this happens because of hormones. But we must admit our mistakes, because there's a big difference between being a real man and pretending to be a man. Says Peter, what will he tell people in his interview tomorrow? Because he herself is worried about it, and it has no control over itself. Peter's father tells Peter that you only speak what your heart wants. The next day, Peter describes his book as the worst book in his interview, and says that it did not have any experience of all these things for 15 years, so it had suppressed its desires. Peter says that we should not suppress our desires, but we should bring ourselves in front of the people. Peter says that sex is a very important part of our life, and we all should take advantage of it. Hearing Peter's words, everyone present here clapped for Peter. Next, Peter come to Rich, and he apologizes to her. Rich forgives Peter here. After this, Rich and his wife ask Peter to go to Michelle and tell her the whole truth, and says that she will definitely like you. Next, Peter, along with Rich and Luke, visits Michelle. Michelle is here with Charlie. Peter is here in front of everyone, telling everyone about the misunderstanding caused by his tumor and late puberty. Hearing Peter's words, Michelle falls in love with him a lot, and she comes to Peter. Seeing all this, Charlie quietly leaves from here. Michelle kisses Peter here. In the last scene we see Peter and Michelle together. Michelle was now pregnant. Peter was teaching teenage children here, and now Peter had written a separate book on puberty. And this movie ends here. Thanks for watching, guys.